Hi, I'm Daniel Johnson, filmmaker. When I'm not making my films, like all good Bruce fans, I'm listening to Set Lust in Bruce.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and today I am joined from down under, but not an Australian. Why don't you introduce yourself, Bruce Bud?
Yes, this is Steven Strauss. Most people would probably know me as the checkered shirt guy, which I'm sure we'll get into in the course of this podcast, the story behind that name, if you will. But I'm calling from Adelaide, Australia, where Bruce and the band will perform tomorrow night, which is be their fourth concert of this Australia-New Zealand Summer 2017 tour, because it's summer down here right now. That's the name of it. So that's where I'm calling from. That's who I am.
Well, Steven, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited. You and I have talked a few times online, and it's funny. We waited till you were half a world away
Yeah,
to
the
schedule
worst
this.
place to possibly schedule this from is what we waited for. But
Exactly. Well, that's how we roll.
exactly.
Um, so yes, we do want to get into the checkered shirt guy, and we want to talk about your shows. But I always like to start out with in the roots. So talk to me about growing up, Stephen. Tell me what kind of music your family listened to, and what you
Yes,
listened to as a youngster, and
yes.
we'll start there.
My dad is from New Jersey, born and raised in Wayne, New Jersey. So he obviously listened to the Bruce when I was growing up. But kids rarely like the music of their parents, at least not at first. So I rejected Bruce out of hand just because he was old people music. He was my dad's music. Um,
Sure.
I started oddly in show tunes. Theater is actually my first love before Bruce. So for much of my childhood, it was like, Hairspray, The Producers, Hello Dolly, Gigi, like Wizard of Oz, musicals. So like that's pretty weird, unconventional. And then my dad finally got me into Bruce, and then Bruce kind of opened up rock and roll history for me. So I kind of went through like Rolling Stone's top 100 albums of all time and did my homework of like Sgt. Pepper's, Pet Sounds, worked my way down that list. I got into electronic music for a time, like very big into DJs, and now I try to keep up with mainstream music just because I like to know what's going on in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll listen to a lot of top 40 like Beyonce, Jay-Z, Kanye.
Okay.
So that was my genesis. But obviously, Bruce is always peppered in. Since I got into Bruce, Bruce was always the one mainstay I had, in addition to my other interests.
Did
So,
so I'm curious, since you started out with musicals, um, but you're also from the younger generation, which and I'm not trying to make this a competition, but what was a little sadder for you, Carrie Fisher or Debbie Reynolds?
Debbie Reynolds.
Yeah.
Because I respect Star Wars for what it did for the history of movies. I was never a Star Wars kid, but
Hmm.
Singing in the Rain I consider to be one of the great musicals ever made. And that to me is pure musical joy. Like when I want to put on a musical, be like, this will make you happy. I don't care what kind of day you're having. I put in Singing in the Rain, and she was a big part of that, in my opinion. So I
Yeah.
had to go with
I-
Debbie Reynolds.
I'm I don't know if I could choose between them, but I know that I agree with you. When I put on Singing in the Rain, I just go, oh my goodness, they go from one great musical number to another great musical number.
Exactly.
I mean,
One
you,
after another after another. It's like, how did they write this?
yeah, and then to think, the classic Singing in the Rain, which is amazing. It's such a cliche, and then when you watch it, you go, oh my goodness, this is amazing.
Exactly. It's a
And
cliche for a reason.
yeah, and then you know, Good Morning and
Unbelievable.
and then Make 'Em Laugh. I
Hmm.
just yeah, and it's actually a pretty decent story, and yeah, it is truly one of my favorite films. Just forget musicals.
Yeah.
So
true. And if I had to, I probably would have preferred for Debbie Reynolds to die first. If there has to be a choice, just because she didn't have to go through the death of her kid, so I would have chosen that probably. But it's just so tragic, the whole situation on both.
Oh,
both
it
ends.
was, and you know, it was. I found it funny when someone, and I truly mean not just like Ronick, but the Postcards from the Edge film, in the book Carrie Fisher wrote, she'd always talked about how her mom always upstaged her, that character,
Of course.
and everyone's like, okay, there you go.
Even in the end,
Even in the end,
couldn't let her have the headlines for 24 hours.
You think, if you believe in an afterlife, which I do, I believe that Carrie Fisher was waiting, going, really, Mom? Really?
Exactly. And Carrie's like, you don't even leave me one day of peace up here. You have to come up.
Yeah, so that was great. So that's wonderful. So I think you and I would be in the very small subset of, hey, Bruce, do your version of favorite Broadway tunes. We'd get that album in a minute.
Yes, that's probably true, but I'm sure when the inevitable Bruce Springsteen musical happens,
Yes.
there will be a lot more Bruce fans on Broadway.
Oh, absolutely. Boy, that sounds awesome. So you, being a very good son, that is pretty typical of, and in fact, Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller talks about, he believes that your children should reject your music. That is the very purpose of rock and roll. Rock and roll should be, almost a rebellion against authority and yourself. So that's pretty standard.
It's interesting though. For my generation, it's like liking Bruce can be a rebellion against your parents, but it can also be a rebellion against kids my age, because most kids my age do not like Bruce. They only know Born in the USA Bruce, and they think he's the hoorah guy, like the voice of the American people. And so, like, in a way, me liking Bruce was a rebellion of its own kind against my peers. Because all my friends were like, you're traveling around the world to see Bruce Springsteen? Like, why? They obviously, like, when they see him live, they understand it a bit more.
Yes.
But even so, I do think liking Bruce was a form of rebellion for me, at least in high school.
No, I totally agree with you. In fact, a couple of examples of that, Stephen. I was ecstatic when he was going to do the Super Bowl. And my son was still in college at the time, and he and his roommates were like, no. I mean, they're like, they had no excitement about that being the show at all. And then I, same thing with my, I started a new job, and my friends and this lady finally said, I don't know who Bruce Springsteen is. You keep talking about him, and then somebody else. Well, Born in the USA, and they started naming, Dancing in the Dark, Glory Days,
Born to Run.
And so, but I was like, so I had bought the new little kids book, Who is Bruce Springsteen? And so I said, you can borrow this so you'll know who he is. So, when you started becoming a fan, when you decided, hey, maybe my old man has a little something, and maybe I should check this out, about when was that?
Yeah, there's actually a story there, so I'll get into that a little bit. So my dad would always play Bruce in the car because he had a rule of the person driving gets to choose the music. I'm sure a lot of fathers and sons have this rule.
Yes.
So he forced Bruce onto me, and the worst way to introduce someone to music is to force it onto them.
Right.
So I just rejected that. I would always be like, can we put on the Broadway channel, please? I don't want to listen to Bruce. But my dad, as the usual dad, is like, oh, Broadway. I don't like Broadway. So, like, there was that fight. I was really big into acting in high school, and my theater teacher was a Bruce fan. And so one semester we did a project where, like, each kid could direct one of Bruce's songs. She gave us the lyrics to Bruce's songs, and we could stage it. We would adapt it for the stage and stage it. I chose The River, just not knowing the song, just because I love the lyrics so much. But while researching, I would listen to the song a lot, and it kind of got into my head a little bit. I got that river worm, where I was like, this song is pretty good. I'm not going to admit that to my dad. There's no way. But I like this song. Mm-hmm. Flash forward to a few months later, my dad was going to go up to Seattle to see Bruce. I wanted to be left at home alone because I didn't want to go, but I had recently gotten into trouble. The last time my parents went out of town, I threw a party. So my parents didn't trust me to stay home. So they're like, sorry, you have to come. I'm fighting the whole way. I don't want to go see this old man. I go to the concert. I'm sitting there. I'm unhappy. I'm like, why am I here? Just being the usual spoiled brat of a child.
About how old are you at this time?
I was junior of high school.
Okay.
So I would say I'm like 17.
Okay.
But Bruce opened with Trapped. And you know, like, how Trapped starts, like, very quiet, soft. And it's one of those, like, from the first moment, I was like, God, who is this man? Because it's a different ballgame. It's like his energy, his passion, his work ethic comes out immediately. So even if you don't love the music, you have to respect the man's work. And 2 weeks later, my dad was going up to Anaheim. I grew up in San Diego, and Anaheim's a 1-hour drive, 90-minute drive. He was going up again to see it, and I was like, if you have an extra ticket, I'd love to go with you. So, you know, I saw the second show 2 weeks later. And then in between, that was near the end of the Magic Tour. And so right around that time was when I happened to be going through my first heartbreak. And we all know Bruce writes about heartbreak and persevering through loss and to kind of get back on the horse again better than anyone else. So it was almost like I found Bruce at the right time in my life. Because I always tell people that, like, Bruce writes about mature themes. You can't put Bruce on for a child unless it's like Waiting on a Sunny Day and expect them to like it. A lot of Bruce's music require life experience to fully respect and understand the depths of his music. So I actually think I got to Bruce at the time in my life I needed Bruce. I would have been the most open to Bruce. And I'm so glad I did, because I think Bruce informed my perspective more than anyone else in the world except maybe my parents. Like, it's just like I see the world so much better through his eyes, his musical eyes, his words. And as a writer, I don't think there have been many better writers in the history of humanity than Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
That's my history with him.
That's interesting. You know, I've often said, and I'm not unique in doing this, there's two kinds of people. The people that go to a Bruce show and go, wow, that was long. And then the others that say, oh my goodness, I want to sell everything I own and go see this guy every time I can. And obviously you were on the second end.
Yes, I was.
You know, you may have heard, you know, my son went to his first Bruce show this past year. He's 27, had, you know, big hip hop and country fan. He went to school in East Texas, and so where country music was pretty big, and so he kind of picked up both. But he, you know, kind of a casual, you know, Bruce is my music. But he said, hey, I'll go with you. He says, you know, I think you talk about it a lot. Let's make it a guy's trip. And he was, oh, my goodness. And then went up with me to Jersey to the Middle Met show, August 25th. You know, and
MetLife 2, right?
Yeah, and he's like already like, hey, next time he's touring, Dad, I got to go with you. This is great.
Exactly. Yeah. It's weird how some people like convert immediately, and others they're like, no, not really my. Like my girlfriend, for instance, does not like Bruce. I took her to a concert. She's like, I respect the hell out of him, but it's just the music doesn't speak to me, and I don't judge her for that. It takes all kind, and it's just like at least she tried. She experienced it. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I always like to say this, the amount of times you've seen Bruce perform live is not an accurate barometer of how big of a fan you are, because there are circumstances, both geographical or financial or other things. But so how many times have you seen him perform?
I was even going to preface mine by saying the same thing you said of like, I really don't consider this any kind of value of how to determine it.
Yeah.
I've seen him, though, 147 times.
Nice.
Which is a lot. I'm very lucky that I went to school in New York City, because if you go to school, if you live in the tri-state area, it's an embarrassment of riches. Like if you have the time, you have the means to go to shows, you can go to as many shows as you want to because he's there all the time. Whereas like from Texas for you or from me, San Diego, we're aware that like when Bruce comes to town, it was like finally he's back.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
In the East Coast, it's almost like we take it for granted that 3 shows down the block in Jersey, 2 shows at MSG. Oh, Philadelphia's right there, Boston's there, DC's there. It's so easy. It's like a cheap bus ride away.
Yeah, it is. And if you know in advance he's coming, you can, okay, I'm going to eat bologna sandwiches for lunch, or I'm going to, I can do this.
A lot of ramen in my college years for that. A lot of skipped classes. I'll say that. Don't tell my parents.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's pretty interesting. I also love the story that the first time you saw him, was kind of almost, and not a punishment, just one of the things that we talked about, and my son's now 27, but he went through a rebellion through high school as well, and had gotten a little bit of trouble, sounds like similar to you, and so we were, he had to go everywhere with us, or we stayed home. Because we're like, hey, if you're grounded, we're gonna make sure, and it sounds like that actually, not that I'm sure you're happy that you were grounded, but it ended up being a really nice experience for you and gave you something you bond. Now, does your dad pick at you about you not liking him in the past, or does he just?
No, my dad always has a joke that like, the most expensive decision he ever made was forcing me to go to that show because of how many like shows that like we've gone to since then together. We've flown so many places together, but that's a joke. I think my dad loved that like there's something we bond over.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very hard to find things that bonds generations, especially like familial relationships when there can be insecurities involved. I think parents and kids are always crazy for that real connection you have with someone, and like Bruce has been that connection for me and my dad, and my family has spent so much time together because of Bruce. And like we all know how many friends you make through Bruce. That Bruce is unbelievable at bringing people together, and I always think it's awesome that like Bruce wrote so much about his father, but like because of that writing, he's brought together so many fathers and sons because of his like willingness to dig into his own dark relationship with his parents. So I'm not implying that my relationship is anything like Bruce with his father's, but I love the idea that Bruce has brought together so many more people because of him writing about how he didn't have that real connection with his dad. I've always found a very beautiful idea.
I think that is a beautiful idea, and I've never heard that expressed before, but a lot of times sports is what connects generations. I think they talked about that, in City Slickers, right? That the only thing my dad and I could ever talk about was baseball. We always had that in common. And, my son and I, Cowboy Sundays is almost the sacred ritual.
Yeah.
Before college, and
sorry,
yeah.
Sorry, by the way.
Yeah, I understand that. Yes. So, I'm gonna switch the agenda up a little bit. So, I want to talk to you about albums and songs that mean a lot to you, but I also want to get into. So, why don't we give me the secret origin of your checkered shirt, and why did you, Stephen? I mean, is it just? In other words, I'm going to put words in your mouth, and please correct me. This is not necessarily shtick. It truly is. You love going to the shows, so you started going a lot. So, okay, so based on that, tell me about the shirt. Tell me what your story. Tell me your version of this.
Of course. So, actually, just to clarify, that my first show was not the Seattle show. When I was 12, my dad took me to a show on the Rising tour. I don't remember it at all. My dad told me I fell asleep during it. So, like, that was technically my first show. But to your point, and this connects to the checkered shirt, I used to be big into sports. That's when my dad connected and I from a young age. And then I kind of dropped out of sports when I got more into the arts, more into theater, more into movies. And so my dad and I almost didn't have anything to bond over until Bruce came in. But once Bruce came, but I brought up the sports thing because I'm a very superstitious person. I am like, it's something that came in for me because I used to be a sports guy. And you know sports, there are superstitions left, right, and center. So it's like the first time I wore this checkered shirt to a show, I won the pit lottery. And in my head, I was like, well, I have to do it every time. Like, that's just how this works. Like, this is a lucky shirt for me now. I have to wear it to every show for the pit lottery. Even, like, and to truth be told, that shirt, it made me incredibly lucky. But, so that was the original origin of why I wore it to every show. Originally it was lucky the first time. I'm going to ride this one out. But...
So I'm going to stop you right there. I am so... I'm smiling so big as I'm sitting here because the sports is so superstitious, and my wife laughs at Chris and I. But a few years ago, when the Dallas Mavericks won the championship,
great year.
I'm
a basketball guy. I'm a born basketball fan.
All right, yeah, and so and what a great run, right? To go and and beat the Lakers and just all the had to work, and so I got Wingstop and ended up calling my mom in the car while picking up Wingstop, and they won, and then I did it again, and so and then my wife Linda's like, God, do we have to eat Wingstop again?
Exactly.
I'm like, I will buy you something else. But yes. And so for the closeout game, in Miami, I'm like hey Mom, how you doing? And she's like, I'm doing fine. And
we just spoke.
Yeah. And this season, during the 10 or 11 game winning streak, Chris and I wore the same shirt every game.
Yep.
We because, and Linda just looks at us like, it really doesn't look. You don't F with the hot streak.
Yeah.
You don't F with the hot streak. So
it's completely irrational, but it doesn't matter. It's just like, why not do it? In the 0.001% chance we're making a difference, I'm doing it.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
So how funny, right? That you just casually picked up a shirt, got a good lottery number, and you're like, oh, okay. I totally see that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm actually a Knicks fan, so I could commiserate with your Cowboys.
Yes.
Recent suffering. Even you guys have a great history, though, so the Knicks can't even rely on that. It's just been all bad for me.
So you start wearing the shirt because that's what you do. Now you said it's been very lucky for you. So talk to me a few other things about the magic of the shirt.
Yeah. So first, the magic started as just like most times I wore it, I got into the pit. It was one of those things where I'm like, no one tells me superstition doesn't work. I'm living proof right now. But since I was in the pit a lot, I'm someone who dances a ton at a Bruce concert. Like, I frankly don't care if anyone judges me looking at me dancing. I'm there to have the best time ever, and I'm going to have the best time ever. With that being said, I try to be respectful of people around me. I never drink at shows, so I'm not like, a drunk mess. But like within myself, as long as I'm not blocking anyone's view behind me, I just go nuts. Because I think, like, why not? Bruce is all about being yourself, and so why can't I be myself at a Bruce concert? So after going to a few shows, I saw that Bruce, I thought he was recognized. Granted, I think Bruce is a master at making, 10 people think he's talking right to them and pointing right at them. It's something that he's very good at, and he's mastered over the years. And since I try to be humble, I'm like, oh, he's probably not pointing at me. He's not, singing that line at me, whatever. And then it was a show in Albany during Shout. I'm going nuts in the back of the pit, usually. And Bruce, during the song, says, this one goes out to the guy in the checkered shirt. I've seen you at all the shows. Come backstage afterwards. And, like, it was one of those things where when he said "you in the checkered shirt," I turned around to be like, there must be someone else behind me in the checkered shirt. Like, this is the dream.
So I was just about to say the same thing. You're like, what did he say? What?
Exactly.
I'm busy here going, shout, shout,
Exactly.
Oh,
It's like you think, even though Bruce is amazing at bridging the gap between the audience and like him, the artist, it's still like you never think Bruce is talking directly to you or like pointing directly to you, to my opinion. It's always like it's a shtick in a way, but clearly it's not a shtick because he does notice us. And like I've seen him notice the same people night in, night out. And I'm a great example of like, no, Bruce is personally interacting with his fans. It is not shtick in any way. It is authentic and it is sincere on Bruce's part.
So I have a question about that because, by the way, yes, you see so much evidence of that where he'll say, you know, we've got a fan out here that's been carrying this sign, for multiple shows, and tonight this is your, night. Do you think, and I've asked this before, and so there is no right answer, do you think that he interacts more with his fans now than he used to, or does social media allow us to see it now more than it used to? Because like on the River Tour, he had, he had, the couple of guys come in and play songs with him.
Yes.
He's had, and at the Jersey Shore, as I went, he had the guy come up and finish his proposal, in the middle of Jersey Girl. Just, you can go on and on about these.
Yes.
What's your opinion on that?
So, I'm not the best person to answer that because I haven't been going for as many years as other people that they can actually base it on personal experience, though I think the memory can play tricks on us a lot. From my own understanding of history, it seems like he's doing it more now. And I have a theory that I formulated over the years that, like, in Bruce's later years, he's been more about giving back to fans. Like, back in his day, Bruce was, like, just a stubborn artist. His concerts were always amazing, but I don't know if he necessarily did things for fans as much as he does now. Of, like, if you think about an album like Nebraska, it was so much not what his fans would have wanted a Bruce, like the next Bruce Springsteen album to be, but he follows his own art. Same thing with Tunnel of Love coming out after Born in the USA. But I think now he's realized that, like, he's in the second half of his career as opposed to his first half, and he's become more about making the entire life of a fan. That's what I think Bruce understands more than so many other artists. If he lets that one person come on stage to dance with him every show, for him it's 5 minutes of his time. For the fan that he invites up, that he lets play, that he points to in the crowd, you're literally giving this person a memory that they will cherish for their whole lifetime. And I find that a very profound idea that Bruce does consciously, because he's in the business of making people's lives better. It's what he's always done in different ways. And the form it's taking now is more like giving people a chance to shine during concerts, as small as a point in the crowd, as big as inviting someone out to grab a guitar and play a song. So that's my theory about why he's doing it. He seems to be doing it more now than early in his career.
I think that's a really good theory, and I tend to agree. I do think he's always done this, and I always think that he's had a connection with his audience, and you hear story upon story about how kind he is if he runs into people, in the wild, so to speak, right? That this is. But I kind of agree. So okay.
Well, I can speak to that about Bruce off stage, if you will, because when I went backstage,
that was the next. That's where I was going.
When he invited me, so like, it was like my parents were at the show, and so I quickly got them like with me because they usually stand a little more off the side. Cause my dad likes to lean against the rail, yada yada. But we're always in eyesight of each other. I got my parents. Gil, Bruce's security guard, came to the front of the stage, and I was like, do you mind if my parents come with me? I wouldn't be here without them. He's like, of course they can come. So my parents went backstage as well. We waited because Bruce, I don't know if anyone knows this, at almost every show, Bruce will have veterans, firefighters, people that that are VIPs of Bruce that don't pay, that he sees after the concert. And so they all go first, as they should, because they're way more important than me. They've done way more for the world than I have. So we waited for all of them to kind of leave, and then we went in there to Bruce. Bruce looked like he had just been having, a fancy dinner. No sweat at all. I'm sure he had a shower there, all dressed. And what people don't realize about Bruce is that, like, they might. He's a normal, down-to-earth, almost shy guy. And you wouldn't think someone who can rock millions of people and be the most gregarious, outgoing person in the world on stage could turn around and almost seem a little uncomfortable in his own skin off stage. But, like, he's just a normal guy who has his own neuroses, as we know from the book. That, like,
Absolutely.
He suffers from the same problems we all suffer from. And that really shows when you meet him. And I'm not saying he's this shy, bumbling guy, because Bruce is incredibly eloquent, regardless of when he's speaking.
Yeah.
But it's like, he just seems like a normal guy who's just like, he happens to be a rock star who millions of people love around the world. But at the end of the day, he puts on one shoe after another, just like the rest of us.
So, Stephen, you mentioned, and you said it very nicely, like you weren't complaining. You were just saying, the matter of the fact is, there was a little bit of wait. Do you remember how long?
10, 15 minutes or so.
Okay,
I think Bruce wants to get home after a show. I mean, clearly, like, he's not the youngest guy in the world anymore.
Absolutely.
But in no way did I feel rushed during the meeting.
Yeah.
Like, he's very good about keeping things to the point, but not making you feel rushed, but also knowing that, like, you're not overstaying your welcome here. Because that's the last thing I wanted to do, was be like, one of those clingy fans, like, sign this, sign that, sign this.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask for an autograph. I asked for a picture, but he was going to ask for the picture anyways. Like the camera was ready already.
So I guess from when you got backstage to you got to talk to him, you said it's 10 or 15 minutes, or?
10 or 15 minutes, yeah. The mitts are like, what can I say to you? Like,
that's what I'm thinking. Like, what are you? Because I will tell you, and I've talked about this on the show, when I drove down to Austin to meet him, I just kept repeating over and over again, like, Luca Brasi in The Godfather, just, I'm going to say this, I got to practice what I want to say. So
I'm not getting every syllable.
Yes. What were you thinking and doing?
Yeah, I was thinking, you want to say something personal enough so that it's not the same as everyone else. Like, I love you, yada, yada, but it should be universal enough where he recognizes why it's so important. So that was the line I was trying to draw. So I actually, what I told him is like, my parents gave him a hug. Bruce is a hugger, thank God, because I'm a big hugger. So, like, I wasn't leaving there without a hug. It just wasn't going to happen. And Bruce,
obviously,
gives my mom a hug, gives my dad a hug, and then I tried to be last because I wanted to have a personal moment with him, just like a one-on-one moment with him. And so I had a one-on-one moment with him, and I told him, I just want you to know that Tunnel of Love got me through my very first heartbreak ever. That without that album, I don't think I would have been able to come back from my first heartbreak quickly. And so for that, I just wanted to thank you. And he hugged me again, said, let me try and find the exact wording because it was worded so brilliantly. He said, that's all right, brother, just keep fighting, that's all we can do. And then he gave me a kiss on the cheek. And the fact that he said, that's all we can do, it's just that subtle, like, instead of just you can do, we can do, he equalizes both me and him calling me a brother. I literally walked out of that dressing room and I became one of those fangirls who just, like, when they meet their idol, they like start crying profusely. And my whole life, I was like, what are those people doing? Like, why are you crying? And then I just turned around and become that person where, like, if I started telling that story to anyone, I would start crying. So it's, like, nice now that I can tell that story without breaking down into, like, a fit of sobs. But yeah, it was just like I cried for days. Just days afterwards, endless crying.
That's such a beautiful statement. And it's very clear what I told him, and I did not have the chance. And I've also said this before. I apologize for repeating myself, listeners, but side note, once on iTunes there is one bad review. I have like 20 good reviews, one bad review where a guy says the host keeps repeating the same stories. So, like typical person, right? I ignore all the people saying nice things and I focus
Oh,
on that one person. So I'm always realize that I tend to repeat myself, but that's because it's a conversation, not just an interview. But anyway,
of course. Yeah.
I told him, and I said I spent 9 months unemployed, and I listened to Better Days and Land of Hope and Dreams almost daily to let me keep having faith and hope.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he got to hear that because um, Austin was over 1,200 people in line,
And they
and
didn't they stick to that 5 second rule that you
yeah,
didn't
I
have
mean
a
they really did. I heard earlier, like when he was in Los Angeles, my friend Richard Hunter, who does a podcast, talked about he felt like Bruce was making every touch a little special, but I think at this time it truly was an assembly line, and I'm not complaining whatsoever. I mean, I felt like when he looked at me in the eye and said hi and shook my hand, and we hugged and took our picture. I truly felt he was in the moment, but they were
yeah,
not letting you have even
a
10
moment
seconds
with
with
him.
him. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. See, but
Uh,
that's also another thing about like Bruce giving back to his fans. I don't think Landau could have convinced old Bruce to ever do that book signing, whereas now modern Bruce realizes like how much those few hours of his life give to all of his fans. Like how many fans would rank meeting Bruce in that book signing as one of the best moments of their life? I'd say a majority would consider that. And so for Bruce now to have maybe the like maturity to see that or to be okay seeing that. I think so few musicians would be willing to do what Bruce did at those book signings. It was basically a book tour where he was meeting thousands of people every day, and it was
yes.
unbelievable that this man was willing to give his time to do that because he didn't need to. That book was going to sell to those people regardless, and he did not
Yeah.
need to do it. I think he did it for his fans.
I think so too. I totally agree, Steven. Um, so, when did you get to go backstage? When was this time?
Yeah, so this was Albany. So this
Okay.
would have been February of 2016. Let me skip ahead a month. A month later, I'm in Oakland. Actually, I should say that like I gave 2016 was my year to become a writer. Before that, I was an associate producer on Broadway.
Okay.
Um, Not happy in my job. Not what I wanted to be doing, and I kind of got to a point where it's like, what do I really want to do with my life? And I've always had that dream of being a writer. And I was like, and this Bruce inspired me to make this leap of like, if I don't do it now, I may never do it. I don't have kids right now. I'm not responsible to anyone else except myself. Why don't I really just uh, throw myself at this for 1 year, give it my all, try to be a writer. If it fails, I'm just 1 year older. I'm not throwing away any career prospect, really. But I'm going to try to be a writer. And so when Bruce announced his tour, it was like, oh, I can write about Bruce. This is a great merging of my loves. So, like, when Bruce called me out for being the checkered shirt, I was coincidentally writing the Backstreet Report that night. So I wrote about my experience. People really liked what I wrote. And so I started my own website to kind of chronicle my adventures of 2016, writing about Bruce. So that's why I was seeing so many shows last year, because I was writing about him and trying to respond to all of them. So a month later, I was in Oakland, and I happened to win the lottery. And by win, I mean like I was one of the first 50 people in, so I was front row. And Bruce opened with "Growing Up," and during the portion of the song where he used to tell a story, I see him like looking in the crowd, and then he turns over to me and he said, "You." And once again, I turned around, so I'm like, it can't be me again. There's no way this is happening one more time. He said, "You young kid, checkered shirt. This is a young person, so come up here and help me out." So I, went up to the stage, lifted myself up. One of the scariest moments of my life was thinking that my upper body strength was going to fail me, and that in front of 20,000 people, I was going to not be able to lift myself onto a stage. Thankfully, I got up on that stage, uh, and I sang growing up. And if you look at the video, which is on my website, you can see the first moment. Bruce points at his teleprompter to like say, if you need the lyrics, there they are. But what people don't realize with the teleprompter is it's a split second in front of the song, so Bruce knows what word is supposed to be coming next. As a fan, though, it totally threw me off because it was like my eyes were telling me one thing, my brain was telling me another, my ears were telling me a third thing. So like I was trying to read the line, I was scared, I was like 20,000 people are watching me, and then after the end of the first line, I had this thought of like, screw it, like. What got me up here was me dancing like a madman, me being a lunatic. B, I know this song like the back of my head. I don't need to read it. So like, thanks, Bruce, but I've got this one. And so what I did is I let my inhibitions go and I just danced and sung my heart out. And I basically showed everyone how happy and how excited I was to be on that stage. And so I sang the whole last verse with Bruce. I'm always very conscious of not overstaying my welcome on stage because I've seen too many other people overstay their welcome on stage. So after it was over, I bowed to Bruce, I bowed to the whole band because I think they're all a bunch of gods. And then I walked off stage. And what people don't talk about a lot is the outpouring of support you get from E Street Nation afterwards. Like when you walk out of a concert that you've been recognized at by Bruce, there is so little jealousy. People say, "Oh my God, I'm so jealous," but it is mostly sheer and sincere happiness for another fan to have gotten to have that experience. And I love that aspect of E Street Nation so much. We both know there are parts of E Street Nation that can be very cruel and haters for no reason, but for the most part, the vast majority are so supportive and so positive, and I think that's a factor of Bruce's music. Like, if you live the ideals expressed in Bruce's songs, you will be, I think, a good person. And so I always like making sure that part of the story is clear about how much E Street Nation contributed to my experience on stage.
You know, I love that you're sharing that. I agree. It is, you know, on my little, you know, when I found out that he was coming to Austin, I got tickets, you know, the outpouring of people, you know, that my people that I follow on Twitter and listeners of the show were like, "Oh, yay, Jesse, I'm so happy for you." And then and I've talked to, like, you know, Nick, the Philly Elvis, and other people that have been on stage, and they said, you know, there is such a joy that, and it really does, there's not a sense of envy or jealous. It truly is one of us. That happened to one of us. You
Exactly.
know, one of my favorite, you know, concert memories was in Houston when the two brothers got on there and sang "No Surrender," right?
No Surrender.
And, yeah, and you know, my friend Sam says, and he's the one who first said that, you know, with all apologies to Disney, the happiest place on earth is a Bruce Springsteen concert, not Disney World. And he said, if someone asked me define joy, he said I would show that clip of those brothers singing "No Surrender" with Bruce, because everyone in the band, I mean, they weren't rolling their eyes like, "Oh, look at these." No, they already have fun performing, and to have that joy on there, it was very cool to see.
Yes. I always think Bruce's fan base is almost like a band of outsiders, to quote the famous movie. It's like, because Bruce is an outsider himself, he writes about the outsider experience. I think a lot of Bruce's fans connect to that aspect of Bruce, that they are outsiders themselves to their lives in some way. And so it's almost like a bunch of outsiders created a place where we could feel like insiders, which I really like. And like, where it's like a place where we can feel comfortable. Like, I think I always, like, I'm not a religious person, and everyone says this, but like, the closest I come to religion is a Bruce Springsteen concert, and like, my gospel is the gospel of Springsteen. It's like, that is just how it is. It's like, and I think that there are a lot of shared tenets about, like, this is a group of people who share ideals coming together in a single space and celebrating what they like believe in, celebrating their conception of life, of America, of love.
Yes.
And so I think that though a lot of people use that Springsteen as religion a lot, I think they use it a lot for a reason. Like cliches become cliches for a reason.
Yeah, I totally agree. There is, I have heard that um, Richard Hunter is a very devout atheist, if you can be devout, and he talked
Mhm.
about his church is the Church of Springsteen. He says, and all I'm required to do, he says, and I'm not even required, but about, once every few years, I give him my ticket and I go enjoy the service, and then
Yeah.
the rest of the time I just enjoy the music. Um, that's awesome. So, how is the website going?
The website's great. Actually, I should probably say the name of it.
Please.
Because I'm trying to
And I will have
promote
a
my.
link in the show note.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So it's Write All Night. Night is spelled like right, so it's WRITEALLNITE .wordpress.com. And I write about every show I see for the most part. I've written about all three for about so far in Australia. When I write for Backstreets, they're much shorter because Backstreets doesn't. I tend to write long to make the understatement of the century.
Yeah.
But you can find my writing either there or on Backstreets. Even what I write for Backstreets, I end up posting on my own website, anyways. Because
Yeah.
I view it now as a sort of portfolio. Like when I get back from this tour, I'm going to be applying for jobs if I don't get offered a job. In that ideal world of someone noticing my Bruce writing. But since I have accrued somewhat of a following in the Bruce world, thanks largely to Bruce calling me out and letting me become the checkered shirt guy, and then I kind of writing about both those experiences and posting it. People like my writing. So yeah, I'm trying to become a writer. So if any listener happens to run a website or a newspaper and wants to hire, please hire me. I'd
Yeah.
love to write for you.
Absolutely. Nice. Um, so I've kept you almost an hour, so we'll wrap up pretty quick.
Okay.
Though we may let's plan when you get back in town. Maybe let's do another episode of maybe a summary of your trip down under. Kind of just
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
kind of do, yeah, that would be fun.
I mean,
So
if you want me every week, I talk to you every week.
oh,
Obviously, I understand that won't be, but whenever you want me, I'm available for you.
thank you. I appreciate that. I will tell you, um we may have you, in fact I will have you, um um I'm going to table this and we'll talk after we finish recording. I'll tell you what, I've got
Sure.
something new coming for the episode. Okay. Albums or songs that mean a great deal to you?
Yeah, I mean, Tunnel of Love, I already explained why. Like,
Yeah.
that was first heartbreak. I think Brilliant Disguise is my conception of relationships.
Tunnel of
Badlands is...
it just
Tunnel,
I was going to
yeah.
mention, if I had a favorite album, and it's really hard. I love so many, right? Like all of us. But Tunnel of Love might be mine, right? It just, there's something about that. I just love that.
It's probably the closest you ever come to a concept album, in a way.
Yeah.
I miss the days, though they're actually somewhat coming back recently, that, like, when artists wrote albums, they didn't just write a collection of singles. They,
Yeah.
they, they poured over track listing, the order, what story am I telling on side one
Yeah.
versus side two. Bruce thought out every small detail of these albums, and
Yeah.
I think Tunnel of Love tells one of the great love stories ever. In any medium, from any work of art, I think Tunnel of Love, you started in It Got You and you ended Valentine's Day, you can learn so much about love and life
Yeah.
and dating and relationships. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable what that man could pack into a 3-minute song.
And I did not realize this at the time, but I remember critics saying, Tunnel of Love was the story of a marriage falling apart. And there is so much pain and
Mm-hmm.
and also joy in there. I mean,
Yeah.
you're right. It tells the story of a relationship. Wrecking Ball, I think, is close to a concept album with his concerns about the state of America and the economy
Yeah.
and such. But yeah, I agree. Tunnel of Love is something special. So didn't mean to cut you off.
Tunnel
Go
of
ahead.
Love. I also love that Tunnel of Love came after Born in the USA. I try to learn as much about Bruce about life from Bruce as possible. And as a writer, I love the notion that like you don't necessarily give your audience what they want, you give them what you think they need.
Right.
And so I love that after the world wanted Born in the USA 2, Bruce turns around and gives them this small, intimate, introspective album. It's just like the opposite of what everyone was probably hoping he would do, including, I'm sure, John Landau, who's probably like, what are you doing, Bruce? We could make millions of more dollars. But Bruce has always been about giving his fans what they need, not what they want. And as a writer, that's so inspiring.
You know, on Sirius Radio, they do, on the 70s channel, they replay the Casey Kasem American Top 40s on the weekends. And it is a beautiful time capsule of where things were in that 70s. And they were playing the song from the Pointer Sisters, Fire. And, my wife's like, I've always loved this song. You love it because it's Bruce. And I said, no, well, I loved it when the Pointer Sister did it. And yes, I did that. I said, but I always smiled at little Steven going, really? We're giving this one away? And I don't know if that's true if he says it, but it feels like something he'd say, right?
No, but Bruce has always done that. That like Hungry Heart was supposed to be for another band.
Yes.
And Landau, was it Landau? No, at that point it couldn't have been Landau, was it? No, it was. I think Landau was like, no, not this one. This one's yours. Like you're keeping this one.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like Bruce, at least back in the day, would almost look down upon pop. And as Little Steven has said, that was one of his problems with Bruce. Is like Bruce would go home and write 3 greatest hits, and he would be like, whatever, I don't even want them. These are songs that like most writers would labor over for a year to try to write these, and Bruce could write them in a day, but he didn't even value that part of his skill. That he almost wanted to do something that he considered to be a higher art form back then.
Right. In one of the documentaries, and I don't remember which one, I think it might have been For the River. I'm not. No, it might have. I don't remember. But what Little Steven said, he could have had a career at one of the great pop songwriters in rock and roll history. So yeah.
No, and I also, as a writer, I find like I love Tracks as an album because it's a reminder that like great writing can be edited and sometimes should be edited for the sake of an album. So it's like when I'm at my writing, I'm like, oh, I love this paragraph. But if it doesn't contribute to the overall message of my article, you have to delete it no matter how well written that one paragraph is. So I kind of try to learn from Bruce's example there of like, some of my favorite Bruce songs are songs that he thought weren't good enough to be on an album. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's frustrating and it's inspiring at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's just, that's hilarious. All right. So before I get you off, I'm going to ask the Mary question. Does she get in the car or not?
Yes.
Okay.
She does. Well, isn't The Promise a sequel to the Thunder Road?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yes.
I would
think
say she gets in the car, but they don't live the life that he promises they're going to live in that song, because that's not how Bruce's world works. Mm-hmm. Life throws many things at you that you don't see coming when you decide to get out of town.
All right. So you have seen a lot of shows. You how many shows are you going to see down under?
I'm seeing, I don't know how many more. I'm getting over the 150 mark. I know that.
Okay.
That's all.
But you are there for several more shows.
I'm seeing the rest of the whole. I'm seeing the whole.
You are doing the whole show. Wow, that is what a wonderful adventure.
I'm incredibly lucky, and I know that. I thank my lucky stars every day.
Okay, very nice. So, as many shows as you've seen, do you have still a few wish lists of songs you have not heard him perform live?
I mean, a Tunnel of Love album show is my dream. I would go anywhere in the world. But I mean, when you mentioned Better Days, I got excited because I'm a big Human Touch, Lucky Town fan.
Right.
I would clamor to hear any of those songs. Like, I think a lot of Bruce's more lifelong fans hold something against those albums because they were in E Street. If you lived through that
Right.
time, you could almost resent the albums because they're like,
Yeah.
this isn't what we want you to do. But since I was coming to those albums knowing that he got back with, it was a happy ending to like
Yeah.
that story. I come to it, I think, with a little less tainted eyes, I would say, like a little more objective, maybe. And someone doesn't like those albums, they don't like them. That's fine. I'm not saying like
Yeah.
you're wrong. I love those albums so much. I think Bruce had one of the best voices of his whole life. Like he's in such fine form, and the writing. Better Days is so autobiographical, and it's like I think Living Proof is one of my absolute favorite songs. And like the first song I'm going to listen to, and I'm a father, is going to be Living Proof because I think.
Yeah.
I'd imagine he probably writes about having a kid better than anyone else because he writes about almost every other subject in life better than anyone else.
Yeah, long time coming is just so, I hope I don't F it up too much this time, as he talked about.
Yeah.
I totally agree. In one of the early episodes, I had a discussion. I don't remember which fan, but I said I would be happy with a show where he played nothing before Tunnel of Love, going Tunnel of Love forward. And the guest said I would be happy with a show where he didn't do anything after Darkness. And I think the same thing you're saying. I came to Bruce, my obsession. I was certainly a casual fan, but The Rising is when I saw him live, and I took my fandom to this other level. So all these albums that he's had have significant meaning to me, and I acknowledge the early episode, the first 2 or 3 albums, and the genius of them, but I don't have an emotional connection to them the way that I do to hear, I'll Work for Your Love from Magic, or, something like that. Interesting. Very cool. So, Stephen, how can someone find you? Now, we're going to give their website again.
Yeah.
It's Write All Night, WRITEALLNITE.wordpress.com.
Yes.
How about, do you have a Twitter account?
Yes. My account is Ain't No Hero is the name of it. No apostrophe, no anything. It's a subtle reference to Thunder Road. I'm no hero.
Yes.
So Ain't No Hero is my Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Steven Strauss. Please request me. I literally blindly accept Bruce fans. I don't care who you are. I want to be a friend with you, and I want to talk to you on Facebook. So I would love to talk to anyone listening, to be honest. I love talking Bruce.
Yeah,
as you do.
Sure. Yeah, and I appreciate that. That's great. Hang on while I do a little business, and then we'll close. If you want to be in the podcast and talk about Bruce and all that implies, send me an email at setlistingbruce@gmail.com. I am also on Facebook, Jesse Jackson, and we have a Set Listing Bruce Facebook page. And we are on Twitter at Set Listing Bruce. If you can, please go to iTunes to rate and review the podcast to help me get past the pain of the guy telling me I repeat too many stories. It truly is a way for new listeners to find us. Stephen, this was amazing. Thank you so much. I had a blast.
Thank you so much, and thank you for doing this. I know a lot of Bruce fans really appreciate you taking the time. And to everyone out there, I've tried editing podcasts before. It is so hard. It is so time-consuming. So I think we should all appreciate Jesse even more, considering that like this is not an easy job. Even though it sounds like we just sit down and talk. That's not what podcasting is. It's much more than that.
And I do. I'm glad you brought that up. I tend to let us go live. So I edit the beginning, I edit the ending, and I try not to, because it takes so long to go through and, okay, I'm going to delete this, and I kind of try to keep it live unless something, major goes on. So, but thank you. I appreciate that. All right, here we go. We're going to end with, now you play the loving woman, I'll play the faithful man. But just don't look too close into the palm of my hand. We stood at the altar, the gypsies swore our future was right. Become the wee hours, well maybe, baby, the gypsy lied. So when you look at me, you better look hard and look twice. Is that me, baby, or just a brilliant disguise? Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Steven. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.